Good morning, everyone. I'm still Kevin Allen. We're going to try this again. He's still Tom Laidlaw, my now longtime broadcast partner. How long have we been doing this podcast? It seems like several years. Some days it seems like an eternity.
Remember, we started off at first, we were just doing the audio version. We had terrible technology. It sounded like the guy that originated your voice was fine. It sounded like I was underwater.
We had. I had a song of the day.
That's right. I forgot about the song of the day. That's right.
Yeah. When I'd pick it based on what was going on with the team or what the theme was.
Yes. That's right. Yeah.
So anyway, we were talking about Jack Eichel, Darren Dreger, and I said I was a little bit sympathetic with the Sabres on this, simply because this is a medical issue, and they've said, look, if we're close, we'll provide all the medical information, and then you can decide whether you want to proceed or not. But they just didn't want to hand out all of his medical information, and in kind of the HIPAA medical world, that's normally the way you would do things. Now, saying all that, I understand your point as well. People want to go the other way. They want to decide, looking at the medical information and see if they want to continue down that road.
But correct me if I'm wrong, though. So in the HIPAA case, if Eichel was to say, yes, I give you permission to release my information, he could do that, correct?
For sure.
Right.
But I don't think he's done that either.
But I mean, if he really wanted to get traded, I'm just thinking from the agent standpoint. I'm advising a player. I'm saying, okay, you want to get out of Buffalo. Buffalo wants to trade you. We need to get this trade done as quickly as possible so that you can get in there, get the surgery done, get into training camp, not miss any time out of your career, do this as smoothly as possible. Yeah. So to do that, you need to then give them the ability to release your medical information.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, like I said, I see your point. Definitely. It's the chicken and the egg. Should you do all this before you even start down the path of whether or not you want to try to trade for them, or you accept just for preliminarily that they say, okay, it's going to be all right. You'll like it when we send it to you, and we'll send it to you when we get close. Right. So I don't know. I mean, you may be right in this.
I'm going to think about the other GM that wants to trade for Eichel, and he's going to say, okay, I'm going to make a deal with you based on the fact that I think Eichel is 100% healthy or can be 100% healthy.
Right.
So now you've showed your cards, what you're willing to give up for the player. And then now you get the information that he's not like less than 100% healthy. And you say, well, hold on, I need to take someone back from the deal. But you've already shown him what you're willing to give for Eichel. And again, I know I'm probably being overly critical of Buffalo based on the history here of the way I think they've handled things. But kind of strange. You'd really like to know, right? Like, what has gone on all this time? It goes back, like, he couldn't finish the season last year. So it's gone on not just during the off season, but a long time here.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I did a piece yesterday on Hockey Buzz where I was trying to make the final determination. We just kind of throw around, well, the Metropolitan Division is the toughest, the tightest, the most difficult division to make the playoffs. And I wondered if that was true. So I went and I looked at each division. I took the number one center, the number one defense, the number one goalie on each team, and I just put it all down. I have it written up at hockeybuzz.com. And one of the things I noticed for the purposes of this discussion is how many minutes Jack Eichel played before he went down. He was playing 22 minutes a game.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was playing a lot. Like, that's a lot for a forward.
Yeah.
That to me, that shows that the coach had a lot of faith in him, even though, not everything was going well there. And he wasn't really at his best. So that's what really struck me. But, if this works, then they get him traded, and then he can, I would assume he's going to say, look, if you're trading for me, you're going to know that I'm going to have the surgery I want to have and not the fusion surgery. So it'd be interesting to see what they say about that. And, what's interesting about that surgery, we haven't talked about this, but I've thought about it, is I'm really a contradiction on the vaccine issue versus surgery. Like, I think it's, it just seems like ethically wrong to say you have to have this specific medical treatment to treat an injury. You ought to be able, as a personal choice, to decide. I mean, think about that in the real world where, you have an injury that you got at work and you're working for Ford Motor Company, and Ford Motor Company says, no, you got to have this surgery instead of that surgery because long-term. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't even remotely accept that. And, on the other hand, but then I'm saying Tyler Bertuzzi is wrong for not getting the vaccine when everyone else is doing it, even though that's a medical decision. It's, the pandemic has really kind of forced us all to look at, some crazy issues about, personal freedoms and so forth.
Yeah, that you raise a very interesting point. I guess I really never thought about it too much all these years being involved in the National Hockey League as a player and agent and everything, that the teams have the right to determine what procedure and what doctors you use as well. And that's
I mean, a lot of today's, I mean, they if you listen to sort of the experts in the medical field, they say you have to be your best advocate. You've got to make decisions about your health care. You have a serious illness. There's a lot of options for you now to go out, and you got to make those decisions. And a lot of times you don't want to make those decisions, but you do have options. And here's Jack Eichel, who has what I'm sure he considers a serious injury, and he wants to make this decision where, according to him and his doctor, he'll have more maneuverability and he'll have less problems as he gets older. And the rehabilitation time is shorter. So,
excuse me, Kevin. So you wonder from Buffalo's end, then, are they just being stubborn?
I mean, I'm sure their position is this. We've been doing this surgery for a long time, this fusion surgery, and we know it works. Right. And from the hockey perspective, even though he's out longer, they've seen several instances through the years of players. And the doctors have as well. They get that surgery, they don't have any problems. Now, the doctors treating Eichel, I guess, would argue, but you're having problems down the road. So,
well, and I'll tell you what, that's one thing, and I've used this example before, going back to last season in the NFL, where Patrick Mahomes for Kansas City, prior to the Super Bowl, the final game, he got knocked out and was, had to be helped off the field. And I was thinking that it's funny the way my mind worked. I thought at the time, if I'm his advocate and I'm thinking of him down the road when he's 50 or 60 years old, I'm saying you shouldn't play in the Super Bowl. Now, I knew full well that he was going to play in the Super Bowl, but that's the thing. Everybody said, well, he came back and he's fine. He's ready for the Super Bowl. But okay, who's going to be there when he's 50 years old or 60 years old? And he's got brain damage and CTE and potentially all those issues from those concussions, right? Nobody thinks that. So to your point, get the surgery so you can finish your career, but who's going to be there for Eichel when he's 50 or 60 years old, and who knows what's going on with his neck and back, right?
Yeah, and and a lot of it we simply don't know. Like, I'm no medical expert, but we're it's our job to sort of analyze kind of what's going on and kind of lay it all out so everybody can make their own mind about who's right, who's wrong on this. Right. But as a general rule through my career, I've mostly sided with the players. Like, I always found it like ludicrous when people would say, "Oh, what these players make, it's just absurd." Well, in what world is it up to the employee to put restraints on his earning power? Like, right. The reason that I never made $1 million a year from USA Today for the years I covered the league is they simply wouldn't give it to me. They'd say no. Yeah. They just would know that we'll get somebody else. Yeah. Well, the owners have the right. They can say no. They don't have to pay these guys, but they never say no. So it's not on the players. Everyone has the right to squeeze, and we all do in our everyday lives, squeeze every nickel we can get. Sure. So why should a player be? So I never really understood that. Right. But
you make me think, Kevin, what if, and I know he wouldn't do this, an athlete wouldn't do it. You get hurt like that, and somebody sits you down and say, "Jack, you get this surgery. We don't know how you're going to be. This is a serious injury that's going to affect you down the road. You shouldn't play anymore."
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so then the team has got, is it a career-ending injury?
Yeah. Well, yeah, no. But we actually do sort of have that happen. Like, look at the number of players. Like right now, Shea Weber played in the Stanley Cup final, and now they're saying he might be done for his career. Well, what that tells you is during the Stanley Cup final, there were doctors who were saying you may be done.
Right.
And look at Henrik Zetterberg is another great example. When he retired, they were able to put his contract on long-term IR because they had multiple doctors, and the league was well aware of this. They had multiple doctors, they being the Red Wings, who would say he shouldn't be playing.
Right.
So as soon as he was done, then they used that. But Henrik Zetterberg didn't want to quit. He didn't feel like he was done. It was to him, it was pain management. It was his decision, his personal deal. But and there are multiple players that happens to, where you can get a doctor, more than one, probably the majority of doctors, who would say, yeah, he shouldn't be playing. So
it's very true. I mean, a doctor's going to look at most NHL hockey players with injuries and saying, yeah, you shouldn't be out there. Yeah.
What are you doing? Yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And it's a different world. Like there are people who get on disability if you're working in a place. If you're in a job where you don't like it and you're offered a chance to leave on disability, I would assume most of the time you take it if you don't like your job. But
true.
But if you're working in a place, if you I don't know what it would be, but if you're a lawyer and love going in the courtroom and could take disability, you probably wouldn't take it because you wouldn't.
Totally. It's funny you'd say that, because I think of times where, especially early in my career, you get hurt and you just would say. But I remember one time I popped my tricep muscle in my right arm, and it rolled up into a ball the back of my arm. And it was pretty painful and everything. And I played for a couple of weeks with it like that. And the doctor came in one time in Madison Square Garden between periods in the training room. And I said, Doc, can you just take a look at this? And the trainer knew about it too. And he couldn't do anything about it if I want to keep playing. And the doctor grabbed my arm. He goes, what are you doing? Like, he's just like, you don't really do it. But, you're just like you said, I dreamed all my life of getting into the National Hockey League. There's no way I was coming out of the lineup. So,
yeah. I mean, and we're in a sport that has long exalted the players that have played through. I mean, I remember, Brendan Shanahan, in a big playoff series against the Ducks, trying to play on a fractured foot.
Yeah.
How
about Patrice Bergeron seems to be the best one, right? Punctured lung, broken ribs, all at the same time, right? Yeah.
I saw in a playoff series Grant Fuhr with an ACL tear go on the ice and try to play, just in practice, to see if he could figure out how to do it, and he obviously couldn't.
Yeah.
We've and there's all sorts of. I mean, Mark Messier used to play with a flak jacket on because he'd had broken ribs.
Yeah, especially in the playoffs, right? There's historic guys playing with injuries that you think, like, what are you doing? You're nuts. But and that's amazing too in the NHL, right? Because remember, the NHL players make their money during the regular season. The money they get as a playoff bonus really isn't anything compared to what they make during the regular season. So they're going out there. They're not playing with those injuries for money. They're playing because they want to win the Stanley Cup. So it's an amazing part of the NHL.
Yeah, and there are people in other professions as well. I remember one of my favorite quotes from Mike Emmerich was, he and I were discussing that he got his first job as a broadcaster where I believe he was making $135 a week. And he said at the end, when he was talking about, they had asked him what he wanted, and that's what he had said. And so he knew he made a mistake right away because the guy just said yes. And at the end of the conversation, he said, but, really the joke's on them because I'd have done it for free. So,
he's good. He's funny. And that's the truth with him too, right? So our crack reporter, I didn't see this. Did you see this? Vander Kane is his own worst enemy, now being investigated for using a fake ID card, vaccination card.
Yeah. She's our intrepid reporter. Yeah.
Did I tell you she was at the walk, the Alzheimer's walk on Sunday too?
Did she weigh in on whether or not you were too much in your speech, or
I don't know. I don't think I don't think we brought it up. We were because part of it was that she's an encyclopedia, not just with the New York Rangers, but all New York sports
oh
teams.
yeah,
Huge
yeah.
Yankee fan, Jets, Giants, and she knows her stuff too. She's good.
Yeah. Well, that's the boy. I feel sorry actually for people who don't have sports in their lives, because it always keeps it interesting. You've always got something going on. Like, I'm a family guy, so there's always a lot going on for me. What's happening with my family, but I also have sports, which always keeps me interested. And just like Susan's big into television like me. We like our series and all that kind of stuff. She's a big, that's where you're lacking. You don't have the same enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, the TV series. Yeah, my TV is rarely on now. It's more. I've really gotten into YouTube and stuff, learning stuff and everything. Susan may be a little bit upset today too. And if you saw or not, the Yankees lost to the Red Sox in this one game divisional.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that game last night. Not a whole lot, but yeah, that's right. I mean, it's bad enough for the Yankees to lose.
Susan is she's an intelligent woman.
Yeah, exactly. Good. Glad to hear that. But it's hard if you're the Yankees and you lose, because you're the Yankees, and
especially to the Red Sox too, right?
That's the point I was about to make.
Okay.
When you lose it to the Red Sox, like, that's just doubly hard.
Well, and they just the last series up in Boston, I think they swept too. They just hammered Boston. So to go in there, and they had their ace on the mound too. That Cole, I guess, was just bombed some.
Yeah. Did you watch that game, or?
I was back and forth on it a little bit, but I didn't watch the whole thing. I'm not as much into I was into baseball in the previous years, but I'm just not much into it this year. But now all the talk is, okay, they're going to fire Aaron Boone, the manager, or what happens to all the players and everything. So,
no, I know it's always that's the hard part about the business. But it's funny. But you talk to coaches now, like the old days. I think it was hard on them, but I think most of them now just totally understand that that's how it works.
Yeah.
Like, they say right up front, well, someday they'll fire me, and I'll move on and do it again elsewhere.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I remember Robbie Ftorek when he coached in LA, he said that too. Like, Robbie was the most disciplined man, honest, to tell you the truth all the time. He was going to stick to his guns. He said to me one time, he says, "Tom, listen, everybody gets fired from coaching all the time, so I'm going to do it my way, because I'm going to get fired anyway." So, yeah.
Well, that is true. I mean, even if you do it their way, you're still eventually going to get fired. Although you probably can last longer by doing it their way.
That's true. Yeah. Well, that's on all the sports radio talk show. I listened to Boomer Esiason in his show this morning. They were talking about that in baseball, it's become more the general managers making all the decisions. The manager is more just the guy that is putting those decisions into play. As far as analytics and changing pitchers and all that stuff. So
yeah, but I think it depends on the personalities of the people. Like AJ Hinch in Detroit, for example, and Al Avila. Like, I think Hinch has a lot more power than most general managers. So that's just I think it just depends on who you are and how strong the manager is.
So what are we going to do with Evander Kane? What's our position on him?
Well, my position is that he's doing everything in his power to lose his career. And as I mentioned the last time we talked about him, you look over the last 6 years, the as a player, he's averaged 26 goals and 100 penalty minutes.
Yeah.
He's a very effective player.
Yeah.
And for him to get this involved, and like when you're betting at that level, it's not like you don't know you're putting yourself in danger. Like what in terms of your career, like that's, he was betting at a very high level, and he's always been involved in these kinds of things. If it happens once, you're going, well, he's young, he'll learn. But this has happened multiple times to him where he's got himself in trouble. And
it's too bad too. It's like you'd like to think, God, if there's somebody around him to sit him down and say, Evander, let's talk about you as a person, like to fix your life. It's not about, like you said, it's not the hockey. He's a fantastic player, but it's like all this stuff that's piled up. I mean, the allegations from his wife, the way he's treated her, It's stuff going back to the where I think it was maybe Buffalo. He went into Toronto one night, didn't come back for practice the next morning. All these different things, fake vaccination card. It's a character issue, right? And you just wish there was somebody around because maybe 20 years down the road, he's going to look back and go, "Oh man, I screwed up my life. I had a dream come true to play in the National Hockey League. I screwed it up. I hurt my child, my ex-wife, all these things." So wish somebody was there to help him, but
yeah. Yeah, I wonder too, like these people, especially a player now, like not getting vaccinated and stuff. They must not know anybody who's contracted this because this is such a miserable disease. And now, we have the long hauler syndrome. We've had 2 from our ranks that we know of, and wasn't there discussion about that perhaps like they didn't know whether or not maybe Jonathan Taves was somehow involved with that.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
And that's why he missed all last year. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, yeah, but I mean, I don't think that's been confirmed or everything. I think that there's the fact that they didn't quite know what had happened to him, that they thought, maybe it was a possibility because we don't know everything about COVID. Now, again, I'm no medical expert. I'm not saying that's what happened to him. I don't really know, but I had seen stories when it was discussed about, okay, if we don't know what it was, then, and maybe they do know what it is. I don't know.
Hey, I was listening to radio yesterday, NHL Network, and there was somebody on, some analytics guy, that actually he was not on. They were quoting him saying that the Seattle Kraken were going to get 97 points next year, the first year in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, that's a lot of points. I've looked at their roster. I mean, they're interesting. They've got solid defense. Their goaltending. If Grubauer has another year like he had last year, sub 2.0 goals against average, but I still think they don't have that number one center. Although you can argue that. Neither did it. Didn't look like the Vegas Golden Knights did either. And then all of a sudden, Carlson stepped up and got a bunch of goals, and Riley Smith turned out to be quite a player. And they had just a whole lot of guys.
Right. And that's the thing, right? Everybody's going to compare them to the Vegas Golden Knights. But I think all of us, I think back to myself, I think anybody was saying that the Golden Knights were going to have the season they did, or even close to that.
No.
I think everybody thought they would not make the playoffs. They'd be trading Neal and all these other guys for more assets. That was the game plan, and that made perfect sense. So for them to do what they did, you're right. I just don't see Seattle doing that. But people have said that division is probably the weakest division in the National Hockey League, so that gives them the advantage of potentially making the playoffs with a season that maybe they don't deserve to make the playoffs. But
it's a very forgiving division. But here they haven't even played a game yet, and they're dealing with some adversity. Yanni Gourde, of course, will be out 3 months. He was their top pick from Tampa, and he had to have shoulder surgery. So
I didn't know that. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, he'll be out for an extended period. So they're dealing with, just like every other NHL team. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say never that they couldn't do that because, there's only 2 teams that I think we can say with some certainty what their performance level is going to be, and that's Vegas and Edmonton. I think Calgary will be pretty good, but I don't know that for sure. I'm kind of bullish on Vancouver. I mentioned before the show, when I was doing this thing where I was, drawing out the number one center and the number one defenseman from each team, I noted that Bo Horvat is now their third center because they've got Miller, who's their number 2 center, who's coming off a great season last year. And of course, Pettersson, by just dynamics and talent and skill, is their number 1 center. And all of a sudden, you got like a hardworking, good hockey player like Bo Horvat as your number 3 center.
Yeah, no, he's a heck of a player. Yeah, and as the team goes too, they had that year 2 years ago where they got into the playoffs, got a little bit of a run there, and then a down year last year. So but that's a younger team, right? That happens with younger players. You'd think that after they had a down year like that, now they're going to come back and they've matured more and have a better year. So I agree with you. I think Vancouver should be a lot better.
A team that I think is real good, and we sort of know that they've turned the corner and everything, but I don't think we realize how good they could be, and that's the Florida Panthers. you look at the moves last year, and I talked about it a lot.
Yep.
They always say you can't trade a whole team, but Bill Zito sure tried.
Right.
He had 14 players, I think, that he brought in for a team. Just kept the core guys. But you look at the trades he's made.
Yeah.
They've got I'm trying to think, Reinhardt. They picked up Reinhardt from Buffalo, who is a proven 20 to 25 goal scorer.
I guess my concern with Florida is still going to be goaltending, right? You got a lot of money tied up with the Bobrovsky, and then you got the young kid come up. Is he ready to play? He's 20 years old.
I mean, I think that's fair, but here's the thing. If you just don't think about Bobrovsky's money, and you just say the worst case, the best case scenario, he's your backup goalie, I think you're okay with that. Sergei Bobrovsky, at a two-time Vezina Trophy winner, is your backup goalie. Now, it's a ludicrous situation because he's going to be earning $10 million, but if Spencer Knight is the guy, and I think the concern would be, let's look in Philadelphia. I mean, Carter Hart looked like $1 million as well, and then didn't look like $1 million last season. Right.
That's the question, right? Is it right to bring these young goaltenders up so early? Right. Does it hurt them down the road? That was a theory in the past that it hurt them. And with Carter Hart, you could argue, see how he does this year, but last year something hurt him. His work ethic wasn't as good. He didn't play as well. He was inconsistent. Was Ron? We talked about this before. Was Ron Hextall correct in saying no? We're not bringing him up yet. It's not right for him for his future.
Well, I mean, I think it really does depend on who the goalie is. Like, it certainly didn't hurt Vasilevsky. Marty Brodeur comes to mind as a guy that came in early. John Gibson in Anaheim played early. He's a pretty darn good goalkeeper as well. So there are some guys that they can now. Spencer Knight, look good, but it's a small sample size, and
it kind of makes me think back to when I was in LA and we had a young goaltender, Mark Fitzpatrick, come up, young goaltender, and it's a famous Wayne Gretzky story I've told before. But we're in Detroit, and I think we beat Detroit like 6 or 7-0. It was in the second period, and Wayne turned the puck over at center ice, and somebody went down and scored and ruined the shutout for Fitzpatrick. Now Wayne was that old school guy that really believed in helping develop these young kids properly. Like your shutout would have been a big thing for his confidence, and in Wayne's eyes, he ruined the shutout. So Robbie Ftorek was coach at the time, and he had one rule where you couldn't lose your composure on the ice. Well, once the goal was scored, Wayne skated down to our end, I think, to kind of pat Fitzpatrick on the pads, and he was mad. He broke his stick off the back of the net, and he was only mad at himself. He felt like he had ruined the shutout. So it was Robbie was coaching. So we come in the locker room. We've got that veteran team. Tonelli was there, Robinson, myself, Dave Taylor, Tim Waters, all these older guys, and the rumor starts going around the locker room that Robbie is going to bench Wayne Gretzky. Well, first of all, it's Wayne Gretzky is in the highlight of his career. It's Detroit, so it's almost like a Canadian city. Everybody's there to watch Wayne. So we're all like kind of giggling like little kids. Like, there's no way he's going to bench Wayne. So we go out in the ice for the third period. Lo and behold, Wayne's sitting on the bench. He's not getting on the ice. And finally, Mike Krushelnyski leaned back to Robbie, and he goes, "Robbie, you have got to put him on the ice." So Robbie relented, put him on the ice, which at that point now it was even worse. Like, you got a rule, you don't have a rule. And but it was more funny with the older guys. So we go in, and you remember the old Joe Louis Arena there where the cinder block rooms. And so they had multiple locker rooms all in the one area where the visitors dressed. And Wayne took Robbie down to a room that he thought nobody could hear him. And they got into a yelling match, and Wayne yelled to Robbie, 20,000 people came to watch me play. They didn't come to watch you coach. And Wayne was, I don't want to paint the wrong picture. Wayne, he was never like that. I mean, he tried his best to hide that confrontation so it didn't nobody else saw it but or heard it. So that's the story. Yeah.
Well, and then the follow-up to that Bernie Nichols filled in for us was that Bruce McNall was going to come on the Western road trip to fire him. Fire Ftorek over that, and Wayne talked him out of it.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot you told me that.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that. I didn't know that until you told me that, and Bernie had told you.
Yeah. Well, and Bernie was very tight with Bruce McNall. It didn't save him when they decided to trade him, but Bruce would hang out. He'd go to the horse track with
Yeah.
With Bruce McDonald. So he was pretty wired in on what was happening. And he was also Wayne and Bernie were tight as well. They were together on the road all the time, and they used to eat lunch. Now, where do you think Wayne Gretzky and Nichols in L.A. ate lunch after practice together?
Oh, I'd have to think someplace Manhattan Beach by the water. I don't know.
Yeah, McDonald's.
McDonald's, really?
They'd walk over to the McDonald's, and Wayne and Bernie would just sit and chat over a quarter pounder and a.
That's right. I remember in Winnipeg one time we were running around. I think we were running to go to the airport, and we were all hungry. So the bus driver stopped the bus at McDonald's, and Wayne was with us. So in the Canadian city, especially, people are looking and going, it's just like, it was unbelievable seeing that Wayne Gretzky's walking into a McDonald's in Winnipeg. So that's interesting. I didn't know they went to McDonald's all the time in Manhattan Beach. So many places. I guess maybe they figured they wouldn't get noticed there, but.
Now you wouldn't be caught dead eating the McDonald's food.
No, I actually was in the Bronx yesterday doing an event for Hispanic Heritage Month, representing the Rangers. And I was driving out and there's McDonald's there, and I was looking at it like thinking, it's just, I haven't been at McDonald's in a long time. Yeah. No. Yeah, I mean, when you're caught out, like, what do you do with the way you eat? Like, if you're, traveling somewhere and, I guess if you had to go to McDonald's, they do have healthier foods now, like salads and chicken and stuff. So there is healthier stuff, but
just I guess there are some options for you, but I just can't see you to do that, and because you've never given in. I know how much you like Kentucky Fried Chicken, and you've never.
Can't do it. Actually, I had the two women from Canton, Michigan, on yesterday that have Celly salt.
Yeah,
I told you about that. So two hockey moms. They were both their friends, and one is a nutritionist, and they created this Celly salt. So Celly being celebration from the hockey vernacular, and there's very good. The one that's the nutritionist was talking about how much lower sodium. So it's a mixture. The main one is salt, pepper, and garlic, and then there's other versions. There's other ones with other spices in it, and the sodium levels are much lower than just the regular sodium. So pretty healthy.
Yeah, that's good. I'll have to mention that to my nutritionist and see.
That's right. How's that going? You know what? I'm not complaining. You're gonna do what's right for you, but you've got a built-in nutritionist in your wife there.
Well, I do, but I'm actually. This is kind of a doctor-ordered thing where he just said, So that's She actually has been working with my guy for 20 years, which is fits right in. I'm one of those. And maybe you're the same. I don't know, but because I know a lot of men are. But I'm like really loyal. Like we have used the same mechanic for 25 years.
Yeah.
I've gone to the same barber for 25 years.
Yeah.
I have had the same doctor. One of them just retired, but I'd had him for 30 years. So we just, I just kind of stick with that. And
I have to go to the same gas station, the same grocery store, same. Totally.
Yeah, just. Creatures of habit, I suppose. But we were talking about Marty Brodeur. I wanted to make this point because I when I figured this out, well, no wonder Lou had such great teams. But Lou Lamoriello was general manager 27 years in New Jersey, and of those 27 years, he had Marty Brodeur as his starting goalie for 20 of those years.
That's right. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. 21 years he had him on the team because Marty played a few games in his first season as well.
Right. And he played back in those days. He was playing 70 games a year or more, right?
He was playing a lot. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think it kind of helps your winning percentage when you have to worry about your goalie because, worrying about your goalie is one of the number one concerns of every general manager. You from year to year, you're never quite sure, what you have. Because
that's really interesting because, he had that one goal. He had Scott Stevens for a long time, Ken Danico, Niedermeyer, all those guys. But the one thing, like he was not afraid to make coaching changes too. Like coaches didn't last.
No. Well, when you have stability in net, it's easy to, you know what I mean? So, well, and then there's one of my all-time favorite quotes came from Jimmy Rutherford, and I was discussing about a young coach that I'd heard about. And Jim was one of those guys I could talk to about. And I said, to be honest with you, I don't even remember who we were talking about. Right. But I said to him, what do you think of this coach? And he said, who's his goalie? And
it's true.
He just made his point. Coach is only as good as his goaltending,
That is very true. Yeah. And then you're able to, like, so much happens from that too. Then you're able to build that system and say, okay, we know we've got that locked in with the goaltender. Here's the system we're going to play. Because systems, people have different systems. It's hockey basically, but people have variations in the system, and they work if the goaltender stops the puck, right?
Yeah. Well, it is interesting though. We talk about systems, but almost all coaches today are known for their defensive systems. Like when you talk about what style he is, you talk about the way he plays defense. Very few guys, only a couple, maybe Peter Laviolette, being one of them. You talk about their offensive system, Laviolette.
When you think of Gerard Gallant, do you think they have his defensive systems?
Yeah, and I also think what I think of him is I see him as a guy who he's more about motivation. He's kind of a Jacques Demers coach, more about motivation, getting the most out of his players than advanced metrics and complicated systems.
And what about Rod Brind'Amour?
No, I think he's advanced. I think he's everything. I think he's kind of the John Cooper who uses everything at his disposal. Like, I don't think people realize how complicated it is. Jeff Blashill was making a point. Mostly he was picking on the media and he kind of making a joke. But he was just talking about the Red Wings played 3 games in 3 nights. And, of course, they're in training camp. So they're also practicing during the day. And he was just saying how that the training camp is always the hardest for him as a coach because there's so much. Like he's trying to pick, 10 power play guys. His 10 guys are going to be on the power play. And their power play was horrible. So eventually they're really just kind of starting from scratch. They brought in Alex Tanguay, who, of course, played for Colorado, was a pretty good goal scorer. And he's kind of changed the power play. And so Blashill feels obliged to, take a fresh look at, who's on that power play and do they have the right people. And so he was just talking about how many hours. And he said, after this, they played 3 games. He goes, after this practice, you're all going to go home and take a nap. And my coaches are going to be here, helping me try to figure out, who's going to be on this power play, and all 10 guys. And, that's the way it is for the modern coaches. They come in 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. They're looking at film, like people talk about breaking down film as if it's like they just watched the game over. It's nothing like that. Yeah. They're breaking down each frame. They're looking at each individual player, what they're doing. They've got all kinds of angles that they're looking at. And
see, and I'm old school too. So I almost think sometimes they're overcoaching it.
Well, I remember the great late Bill Gatz talking about in the old days in the 1950s. Like you'd have this meeting on what happened on a breakdown on a goal. It would go the same way all the time. You'd have 5 guys in, and everybody would say, okay, what happened on this goal? Look, he was wide open here. And everybody'd say, well, I had a man. And the next guy say, I had a man too. And it turns out everybody had a man, but some guy was wide open. And he goes, then we got video in. Bill said, it changed everything.
Oh, I know. True.
Because we knew who didn't have their guy then.
That was the funny old saying all the time. When something bad would happen, everybody go, I had my man.
I had my man. Yeah. Well, that, even on the Sandlot, I remember, kid with fooling around, like we'd be playing football and, you'd say, I blocked my guy. I don't know why that you got creamed back there. So,
Very true.
Yeah. Well, they don't, that's the thing that, kids don't do. I mean, I'm sure there's some of it going on, but, we used to play baseball, dawn to dusk. And then, in fall, we'd play football, tackle football, no pads, just all the time. In winter time, as soon as they'd freeze the tennis court at my local elementary school, we'd be out there, just playing all the time. And you don't see that anymore.
Yeah, it's unfortunate now. Everything's so organized. You have to be coached, the referees and everything. And I agree with you. I wish more towns would just have an outdoor rink. Obviously you have to have supervision, but just let the kids go out and play. I was fortunate on the farm. We had a field that was kind of in the middle. It was kind of sloped in, So it would snow, and then we get some warmer temperatures, and the snow would melt and then freeze again. So it created like a ice for me. And it was great because there's like certain spots where the grass was sticking up or whatever. So I had to stick handle around the grass, and the dog was out there with me. So that was, I would spend hours out there. Yeah. I don't remember sitting inside too much. Yeah.
Yeah. My grandson, who's going to be 4 in the spring, he wants to get on skates this year. So, I have 5 acres. So we're talking about putting a rink in my backyard.
Good. Oh, nice. And it gets cold enough for it to last, right?
Oh, yeah. 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 Well, yeah.
Well, once you spend like about $250,000, you can get one of those rinks that has like a little refrigeration system too.
Well, our friend Declan has a really nice rink that he built. His wife is an engineer, and Eklund actually has just engineering instincts. So he basically drew up the plans for his own rink. And, he's got a scoreboard and the Canadian American flags. It's quite a rink in his backyard. So
that's cool.
It's a miniature rink. I mean, it's
right.
not the same size, but
right.
But you can have some sort of one-on-one.
That's our good friend Barry Shelley that listens to us all the time. He built one in his attic. He built a rink. I think he's got penalty boxes and all kinds of stuff built up in his attic. So yeah.
Is it in his attic?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's his attic. Yeah.
A little hard to play on that, isn't it?
Well, I think it's more. I don't think they play. It's more like the
I got you.
It's all the other stuff, like the locker room, the benches, and all that other stuff. They've got a Hall of Fame there. I was inducted into the Hall of Fame in Barry's rink.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm impressed.
Yes, definitely. That's the 3rd Hall of Fame. Brampton. I'm in the sports Brampton Sports Hall of Fame and the Northern Michigan Sports Hall of Fame too.
How long was your speech at those events?
I couldn't get to the one in Northern Michigan. I was at the one in Brampton. It's funny. I was thinking about the other day. My mother was going through cancer at the time, and ultimately took her life. And so I got up, and I didn't think I was going to get emotional. But when I got up and I thanked, everybody usually thanks their parents for the big role that they played in it. I got up and I mentioned my parents, and I turned into a little baby. Started crying in front of everybody.
Oh yeah. You always think that. That happened to me. My old high school, and fortunately for me, it wasn't a lot of people, but they had this little. The teachers from the school came in, and they honored that I was the alumnus of the year, and they brought me in, and you're just speaking to all these teachers, and I was fine, and then I walked up there, and a couple of my high school friends were there and everything. I just looked out and I just lost it.
I know, isn't it true? Yeah.
So,
and then once that starts happening, I was the same way with my son when he got married. I had practiced the speech. Like I made the speech the night before at the rehearsal dinner, and I practiced it. And even when I was practicing the speech, I get to the point talking about him, and I get all teary-eyed. So, but I practiced it. And he was kind of waiting for it to happen because he knew I was going to get like that, and he thought it was pretty funny that I'd start crying in front of people. So and I got to the point where he knew I would get kind of teary-eyed. He goes, "Oh, here we go," and it kind of helped me, I think, more. Nope, I'm not giving in. I'm not going to do it. I got a little teary-eyed, but not too bad. But actually, speaking of speeches, our good buddy Walt Kyle got inducted into the Northern Michigan Hall of Fame recently. His brother sent me the video, and he told the story that he had told you about how Rick Comley, who was the coach at the time, came in and said, "Listen, you're one of the captains, but there's no question Tom Laidlaw is the leader, but you need to, how did he say it? You need to protect him or something like that?"
Yeah, no, I'll tell the story. So Walt Kyle transfers in, and Comley calls him in, and he said, "Walt, I just really want to be clear on here because obviously I talked to you about leadership. That's one of the reasons I wanted you to bring here. But, Tom's like the Pied Piper. They all listen to Tom. When Tom says we're drinking, they all go drinking. When Tom says we're going to work hard, they're going to work hard. When Tom says we're going to win this game, they're going to win this game. So Tom is the important leader on this team. Tom is in charge of the team. But Walt, you are in charge of Tom."
He even added to the story a little bit, saying that that was like on a Wednesday, he gave him that speech. On a Friday night, we went out to this bar we went to all the time, and there was an Air Force base close by. And I don't know how it happened. We got in a little bit of an altercation with some of the Air Force guys. And that was on the Friday night. Saturday morning, Coach Comley called Walton. He goes, "What happened?" What happened? He told him.
Yeah.
Well, Tom led the way.
So. Yeah. So I could see that too. I could see you being the Pied Piper, getting all your.
It's funny. I didn't realize at the time, though, but looking back at it, when you told me the story that Walt had told you, it kind of made me laugh a little bit because
that's one of my all-time favorite hockey stories. Because it just has so many elements. Because leadership is so important on a hockey team, and we all know what it was like back then with teams. Like everybody did everything together. I think it's a little more disjoint today. I think everybody does their own things, but
because they're making a big deal at the Rangers here about having a captain, and I do think if you have somebody that is captain material, it's important to have that captain. But I just don't know if you can force that either. I mean, maybe like I've mentioned, and Susan Brooks and I have a discussion about this, that I think Kreider is a captain material, although he doesn't always show it, and maybe having the C on his jersey would, make him realize, listen, I need to be more consistent in my effort. So, and I should be careful with effort. I think he gives effort all the time, just he's not always at the top of his game. So,
I actually talked to a guy one time that he was talking about. I said, "Well, did you want to be captain?" He goes, "To be honest with you, I really didn't, because you got to always organize the Halloween party, and that's a real."
That is funny.
Yeah, I know. My first thought was, don't you always just give that to your wife anyway? That was
the famous Herb Brooks story when Barry Beck was captain, an undisputed captain of the Rangers when I was there, and he got hurt. It was for a long period of time. He was going to be out, so they're going to name a new captain, just interim. And he'd gone to Anders Hedberg, and Anders was a well-respected older player. And Anders said to us, "Herb, I really don't think I should be captain. I think Tommy should be captain." And Herb comes over to me. He goes, "Laidlaw, you're captain. Nobody else wants it. You're captain."
That's great.
That was Herbie's way, instead of giving me some compliment, Tom, the guys really respect you a lot. So no, nobody else wants it. You're it.
Awesome. All right. Well, we better call it a day today. You can read me at hockeybuzz.com or DetroitHockeyNow.com. And, I just want to remind everyone, we only have now, 6 days till the start of the season, something like that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Huh. Huh.
12th. The 12th is opening day.
Yep. 12th is opening day. Yeah.
So,
all right. If you want to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Again, that is radio.co at 365 Sports. We'll see everybody on Monday.